Hey guys, welcome back to another listography. Today we're going to be talking about Rush. So a little bit of background. Rush was my favorite band from the age of about 14 to approximately 20. So this is a list that I've thought about a lot. I've made this list many times in the past, but it has been a while since I've listened to a lot of Rush. So it was interesting to see how this new list differs from, what I used to think about the records. It is a little bit different. So let's get into it. We got 19 full-length albums to look at, and number 19, gonna go with our most recent album, Clockwork Angels. So, after I turned 20, I started listening to a lot of different music. Wasn't listening to Rush quite as much, but I was still following them with Snakes and Arrows and this album, Clockwork Angels. I was still paying attention, checking out the records when they came out. But after listening to this record maybe once or twice, really did not like it, and I pretty much stopped listening to Rush for several years after this came out. So I went back to it this week, gave it a couple listens. It's definitely not as bad as I remember. I don't mind it so much at all. There's some really good guitar work on it, some good solos from Alex, probably the best solos of this latter part of their career. Like the last three albums after getting back together, after Neil had gone through all his stuff. But that's about it. The songs aren't super memorable. And going back through the entire discography like I just did, if you go backwards from here, it doesn't take you long to find songs that are just way more memorable, more melodic. Even just like stuff from Tesseract and Counterparts, or just there's no comparison. So yeah, this one, it's okay, but it's my least favorite. Number 18 is going to be Vapor Trails. This was the first record of theirs to come out after I had become a big Rush fan, so I was super excited for Vapor Trails when it came out. I believe I was a senior in high school, and I was a little ashamed to admit at the time that I didn't love it. It felt like, that would be betraying, part of my identity or something, because I loved Rush so much. But yeah, I didn't really love it. I liked it a lot, and I listened to it a lot, but yeah, I couldn't fall in love with it the way I had any of their other albums. The mix, when it initially came out, was really bad. It's a very dense record. It was very muddy, over-compressed. There is a newly remixed version of Vapor Trails available now, which I listened to for the first time this week, and it is a lot better. You can hear things with a lot more clarity. But again, the songwriting just doesn't have a lot of melody the way some of their older work did, and it just doesn't really stick with you in the same way that their classic material does. So number 17 is going to be Snakes and Arrows. So the three most recent records are going to be the three at the bottom. This is by far the best of the three, though. There are a few standout tracks. I like Far Cry a lot, and The Way the Wind Blows is great. There's a little more sonic variety on this album too. There's acoustic guitars and spaces where things can breathe a little. They're not so dense. So yeah, I like Snakes and Arrows a bit, and definitely more than the other two. Number 16, I'm gonna go with Presto. This came out in 1989, right after the period where they had been doing a lot with synthesizers and sampling, and sequencing. And this was a conscious effort on their part to scale all of that back a bit. There are some good songs here. You've got The Past, Show Don't Tell, Hand Over Fist, all songs that I like a lot. But this album doesn't have all the texture and some of the great stuff that they were doing with Hold Your Fire and Power Windows. It's also not as melodic or as great in the songwriting department as their next album would be, Roll the Bones. It doesn't have the heavy guitars that Counterparts or Test for Echo have, so there's not a whole lot to latch onto here. It's an okay record, but a bit of a letdown. Number 15, Caress of Steel. So this was their first, like, after dabbling with Bytor and the Snow Dog on Fly By Night, this is their first real attempt at getting a little bit proggy. There's some long, unconventional songs on this record, Fountain of Lamneth and The Necromancer, which are kind of interesting songs, but they're a little weird, a little disjointed. They feel like pieces patched together. They don't flow very smoothly the way the long epic tracks later in their career would. You've got I Think I'm Going Bald on the first side, which feels like an outtake from their debut album. So this album is a little all over the place. They haven't really perfected the long prog song structure yet. But Bastille Day is fantastic. Opens the record, very strong track of theirs. And there's enough of interest here to make it a decent record. Number 14 is going to be Fly By Night, their second record, their sophomore album. The first album with their drummer Neil Peart. Not quite as straightforward as their debut, but still pretty much, for the most part, a hard rock record. Not so much prog or long songs, mostly just 3-minute, 4-minute rock songs. You do have Bytor in there, which is their first attempt at a longer format song. Anthem's great, Fly By Night's great, some other okay stuff, but it's just a decent record. Number 13, I'm going to go with their debut, self-titled record. This is just a straightforward meat and potatoes rock record. Fantastic, great guitar playing by Alex Lifeson. He's the star of the show on this record. People know Working Man, but if you don't know this record, I would highly recommend checking out Here Again. That song has really, really good guitar playing on it. Number 12, Test for Echo. This is a great sounding record. Probably the best bass tone that Geddy ever had. Drums sound really great. They use synthesizer just very sparingly here and there, but it adds really nice textures where they use it. Test for Echo is great, Driven's great. I love the riff on Virtuality, Time and Motion's very cool. There's a few songs here and there that aren't quite as good, things like Half the World and Color of Right, but for the most part, a very solid record. Number 11, A Farewell to Kings. So this came out in between 2112 and Hemispheres, and I think it's a little bit lost in the shuffle because of that. But I think anyone that likes either of those two albums would really like Farewell to Kings. It's a very good record. Number 10, Grace Under Pressure. So this is a continuation of a lot of what they were starting to do on Signals, very new wave influenced, a little bit of reggae influence. This record, compared to Signals though, has a very cold sound, very icy, not just in the synths, but also in what the guitars are doing, and the drums sound a bit more synthetic as well. It sort of has a cold and detached feel to it, which is very cool. Number 9, Signals. Again, like I said, very new wave influenced, especially by things like The Police. They were really into that at the time. this is probably around the time where they started getting some pushback about how much they were utilizing the synths. They become a big part of their sound on this record. But despite that, they are still really playing well. Some of Neil's most intricate and complex drum parts on this record. I mean, if you listen to the bass on Digital Man, it's crazy. They're still really at the top of their game as far as their playing goes. And some really good songs as well. New World Man, Digital Man, Analog Kid, Chemistry. Number 8, I'm gonna go with Roll the Bones. Production on this sounds a little dated now. It's a little bit thin on the bottom end. But this record has some of their best and most melodic songwriting that they ever did. Bravado, The Big Wheel, Roll the Bones, Ghost of a Chance, Dreamline, all songs that I like a lot. Number 7, following Roll the Bones counterparts, they tried to beef up their sound a bit. They brought in Kevin Shirley to produce, and he does a great job. This is definitely a much heavier record, a lot more guitar, but they continue the great songwriting that they were doing on Roll the Bones. Really good melodic songs like Cold Fire, Everyday Hero, or Everyday Glory, Nobody's Hero. I like Double Agent a lot. Some really cool stuff on this record, and it sounds fantastic. Number 6, Power Windows. So on this, they go beyond just using the synths a lot, and now they're using samples and sequencing things, a lot of sounds jumping around speaker to speaker, a lot of layered textures and sounds. Makes it a very unique record. It doesn't so much feel like they're trying to take elements from new wave anymore. They've sort of incorporated all of that into their sound, and it's happening, more organically now. Feels more natural, and it's a great record, great songs. 2 of my favorite Rush songs on this record, Emotion Detector and Marathon. Number 5, I'm gonna go with 2112. So this was the first Rush album that I ever really fell in love with. Because of that, it's hard not to put it even higher on this list, but comparing them side by side, side 2 of this record doesn't stack up quite as well as on some of these other records ahead of it. But it's a great record, and a landmark record in their career. Number 4, I'm gonna go with Hemispheres. So if you love Rush simply for how good they are at their instruments, this is gonna be the record for you. The playing on this is absolutely top-notch, very complex, intricate stuff. Geddy singing at the top of his lungs, all 3 of them really just going off. La Villa Strangiato in particular, and Circumstances, The Trees, just really high-level playing. Number 3, I'm gonna go with Hold Your Fire. It's very similar to Power Windows in the respect that it has a lot of synth, a lot of layered sounds, but I like the songwriting on this record a little bit better. Songs like Force 10, Time Stands Still, Prime Mover, Open Secrets. Yeah, it's a great record. And a record that maybe I would start people with if they weren't necessarily into hard rock or prog, if they were coming at Rush from a different angle. I might get them started with Hold Your Fire. Number 2 is Moving Pictures. So kind of a neck and neck race, number 1 and number 2 here. Both of these records that I'm going to talk about perfectly balance all of these different elements that Rush have incorporated over the years. Short songs, long songs, a little bit of synth here and there for texture, great playing, great songwriting, very melodic. So yeah, Moving Pictures is great. Tom Sawyer, of course, YYZ, Red Barchetta, just great songs all throughout. Some of the best songs of their career and some of the songs that they're most well known for. But edging it out by just a hair, number one, going with Permanent Waves. Really, I think neck and neck. If you compare the side A's of each of these albums, they're neck and neck. Permanent Waves having Spirit Radio and Free Will and Jacob's Ladder. But I think I prefer side 2 of Permanent Waves by just a little bit. I love Natural Science, and I think Entre Nous and Different Strings are very good, overlooked songs in their catalog, which I prefer to Witch Hunt and Camera Eye. So yeah, Permanent Waves number 1. That's my Rush listography. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that bell for notifications, hit like, find us on Facebook, Twitter, and of course, if you'd like, comment and get some discussion going down in the comments. Thanks for watching, guys.